Hey guys, I wanted to take this opportunity to wish you a happy first day of May. May is a really exciting month for me. I love May for a lot of the same reasons that you probably do. The weather finally is starting to be beautiful and exciting things happen in May. I graduate in a couple of days, and I know a lot of people out there do, so that's exciting. Um, my birthday is in May, so that's cool. That's exciting always until I get older, and then it probably won't be nearly as exciting. But there's something else that excites me about May, and that is that it is Mental Health Awareness Month. And that is something that I am really passionate about and have been passionate for a long time for a lot of different reasons that I'll get into. And, I've wanted to make a video like this a lot in the past and never really did. I don't know why. I don't know if it was just fear or, fear of being like rejected or judged or what that looks like. But for whatever reason, I feel like now is the time for me to do this. And so I'm really excited. For those of you, most of you know, I'm in PA school, and tomorrow I wrap up my rotation in psychiatry, and I have absolutely loved it. It has been a breath of fresh air for me, and I have really been able to, experience healthcare in a whole, different paradigm. Working with people in my psychiatry rotation has been really rewarding, and seeing their success, seeing their failures, seeing their struggles, and seeing the things that they come up against on a daily basis is really one of the main reasons that I wanted to make this video and talk about what is mental health and why do we need to be aware of it. The other reason, which is a lot more personal, is that I, for the majority of my life, have struggled with mental illness. Some of you know that if you've heard my story. Some of you that might not have heard that. Some of you that could come as a shock. It's not something that I've always been great about talking about. And it's something that as time goes on, I have learned what it looks like to live with mental illness and what that looks like for me personally, and obviously for people that I work with, the patients that I see on a daily basis and have been seeing on this rotation. And so that's kind of why I wanted to do this video, to talk about mental illness, to talk about what it looks like to be aware of that. And unfortunately, I've recognized it in my own life and also in the lives of the patients that I see. There is a huge stigma against mental illness. A lot of people don't really even understand what that means. And so the reason that I'm doing this video, and the reason that I plan on doing, hopefully more videos like this over the next couple of weeks as we, celebrate Mental Health Awareness Month and kind of figuring out what that looks like is, I'm very passionate about this, obviously, because it's affected my life, but I think that it's something that we as humans need to better understand. Because even if you don't struggle with a mental illness, I guarantee you that you know a lot more people than you probably even realize that do. So what is mental illness? Mental illness as a term is very general. It talks about a lot of different things, and a lot of things kind of fall under the umbrella of mental illness. Things like depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, eating disorders like anorexia, bulimia, post-traumatic stress disorder, schizophrenia, personality disorders. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And the thing is that mental illness looks different for every single person that struggles with it. Just like a lot of other medical conditions, not everyone is going to have the same blood pressure, and having a high blood pressure isn't going to affect everyone in the same way. And it's the same thing with mental illness. Saying I have depression, which is, the mental illness that I have and have kind of lived with for a while. That doesn't mean that I am the exact same as every other person that struggles with depression. And the same is true for all of those mental illnesses. Not every person that has anxiety in the same way, and it doesn't affect them in the same way. And, kind of my goal in all of this is, to end the stigma. And that's a movement that has been, is a great movement and is something that I really want to get behind, especially through these videos and over the next couple of weeks. And honestly, for the rest of my life, is there is a huge stigma about mental illness. And I think a lot of that is because people just don't understand what it is. And again, so that's kind of why I want to make these videos. I'm not trying to point the finger at anyone, and I don't really have a goal for anyone else. And if anything, just making these videos, if that helps me to deal with my mental illness, then I'm gonna chalk that up as a win. One thing that I really want to talk about with mental illness is that it doesn't discriminate. I think that there are a lot of misconceptions about who could have a mental illness, but it affects every age group. Kids have mental illness. High schoolers have mental illness. Elderly people in their 60s and 70s, they have mental illness. It doesn't see race. It affects white people, black people, people of Asian descent, Middle Eastern people. I mean, it affects everyone. And the big one is that it doesn't discriminate by socioeconomic status. We have, millionaires that struggle with mental illness, celebrities that struggle with mental illness, and thankfully more and more of them are coming out and saying, I have this disease and this is how it affects me. And people of lower socioeconomic status, it affects everyone equally. There are definitely things that can cause people to have mental illness, and there are a lot of different things, and I think that people don't fully understand that even. There are a lot of things that go into that, obviously traumatic events that we go through, those can cause lasting impacts on our lives. We see that a lot with veterans or that come back from war, or people who have had some sort of trauma in the past, whether they were assaulted or abused or neglected. But also just our brains in and of itself. Our brain is an organ, just like our heart. And people that are in medicine know, not everyone, some people it works perfectly, and other people we get high blood pressure. Some people it works, our kidneys work perfectly, and then other people end up having to need treatments for things. And it's not because of anything that they did, it's just because something within their body was out of whack. And that's the same thing with mental illness. Our brain is a very powerful organ. It obviously controls literally every part of who we are. And sometimes, unfortunately, within our brain, we have these chemicals and they can get out of whack, and that can cause us to have these mental illnesses. And I think that that's where the stigma lies too. A lot of people say, you hear things like, well, I have a mental illness and that means that I'm broken or that I'm weak. We get it in, I think culture tells us that only weak people can suffer with these things. Only, if you have depression, it's because you worry too much. And that sometimes could be true, but that's not the case for everyone. And I think that is really what we as a culture need to understand, is that mental illness doesn't look the same for everyone. And it is really hard, and I give people credit when they don't understand, because it's not something that we as people that struggle with mental illness, it's not always easy for us to explain. It's hard for us because people that don't struggle with these things, it's hard for them to understand what's going on in our head. And so again, that's another point that I really want to get across in these videos is, what does it look like to have mental illness, and what are the things that go on through my head specifically? I can't speak for everyone, but what are the things that go through my brain, and hoping that people can come to get a better grasp of what that looks like. But I think that we need to start having the conversation, because unfortunately we live in a culture, where we see it all too frequently. We have kids, high school students who are committing suicide. We have people going into schools, going into restaurants, and acting out in violent ways. And I'm not trying to get political, that's definitely not the point of this, but I think at the core of these situations is that we as a culture have neglected to talk about mental illness. We as a culture have pushed it aside because it makes us feel uncomfortable, or because we don't really understand it. And I think it's because of that we start to have these sorts of things. We start to experience, people don't have outlets. They don't understand what's going on within them, and they don't feel supported. They don't know that they have people that they could talk to that could help them as they're working through their mental illness. And so that's why I'm doing this. That's why I'm stepping out. That's why I'm wanting to speak out about my own mental illness. I still struggle, but I struggled with very severe depression for a long time. And maybe in one of these videos I'll go more in depth with my own story, but, basically from the time that I was young in junior high, really up until I went to college, I struggled with severe depression. I thought, I believed a lot of lies about who I was and about, the life that I have. And I thought on a somewhat regularly basis, almost daily sometimes, I had thoughts about wanting to hurt myself or, commit suicide. And fortunately, I didn't do that. I never did. But there are far too many people in this world who do. Far too many people in this world who try to hurt themselves daily, who have these thoughts about wishing that they weren't here or that the world would be a better place without them. And the truth that I've come to learn is that that is not true. Every single person on the face of this earth has value. And my goal through all of this is to help people to realize that, to help people to realize that they do matter, that they do have value. And my ultimate goal is to help, to do my part to end this stigma. So I don't really know what this month is going to look like. I don't necessarily have it all lined out about what I'm going to talk about or what I'm going to do. But in this first video, I really just wanted to bring it to light. I really just wanted to speak up about my story, to say I struggle with mental illness. I struggle with depression. And that's something that I probably will struggle with for the rest of my life. And I've come to terms with that. We treat mental illness in a lot of different ways. But I think that one of the biggest ways that we as a culture need to work to end the stigma is by recognizing that it is legitimate, that it is valid. In medicine, if I have a patient who comes in with high blood pressure or diabetes, it would be wrong of me to say, oh, you should just ignore it, don't treat it. And for people that aren't in medicine, if their father gets diagnosed with high blood pressure, or if their mom or grandma gets diagnosed with diabetes, I like to think that most people would say, you should probably get that looked at. You should get treatment for that. You should take whatever pill your doctor says because it's good for you. That's what's going to make you better. Why can't we do that with mental illness? Why can't we encourage people around us to speak out, to seek the treatment that they need? Why are words like mental illness or counseling or therapy or psychiatrist, why are those things taboo? I think for far too long we've allowed that to just be a separate part of the world, and we like to put it into a closet and pretend like it's not happening. But it is happening. It's happening a lot. And so, I hope that you will join me over the next couple of weeks, and I hope that together we can all work to end the stigma. Thanks for listening. Stay tuned for what's next, but I truly think that amazing things are in store, and I think that we as a culture need to wake up to the fact that so many people that we work with, live with, our family members, have mental illness. So again, let's all work together to end the stigma.